Halloween happens to be my favorite holiday and it is right around the corner. So to get in the spirit, I wanted to draw a spooky owl. Well, at least as close to spooky as I could get. Hey y'all, my name is Brad and welcome to my channel, Brave the Woods. I'm a professional illustrator and this channel is a way for me to share everything I know about digital illustration, from tips, tutorials, to reviews, all the things. But if this sounds like something that interests you, then make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. Today I want to walk you through an illustration I finished on the iPad Pro using the Procreate app. Like I said earlier, I absolutely love Halloween, but I'm more of a classic Halloween type of person. Clearly, if you look at my illustration work, you're going to notice that my spookiness level is pretty mild. But don't you worry, this owl is going to be epic and graphic and awesome, so let's dive right into that. Like every illustration I do, I always start with a sketch. Now that's just a way for me to figure out the composition, make sure everything fits right, and I'm happy with it before I get jumping into color and into too many details. Now I do have a reference image here, and what's really cool about Procreate, one of the new functions I think with the 5X update, they added the reference window. So you can add your reference image there. It's not in its own layer, it's just in its own little window. So I can go ahead and move that around. I can even, clear it if I want to, but I'm going to put it over here in the little corner just so I know what an eagle owl looks like. That's what we're going to draw today, but I'm going to make it feel kind of vintage Halloween-y. That's my goal, at least. So the brushes I'm going to be using for this entire illustration are the Mid-Century Brush Pack by Retro Supply. So this is one that I worked on with Retro Supply, and I absolutely love these brushes. Not biased, I just happen to help make them, so I'm very excited about them, and they're perfect tools for me. So especially this carbon tab brush. It's an amazing brush and we'll use it a ton today. But first I'm just going to start with the HB2 pencil for the sketching. And then I also want to do one more thing before I start sketching, and that is turn on my drawing guide. Now some of you already know what this is. If you don't, drawing guides are super handy in Procreate. They allow you to do things like mirror, create isometric grids, or do some perspective work. But I'm just going to do this and make sure it's, I want a symmetrical sketch here, just at least to start. So I'm going to have mine set over here to symmetry. And you have options. You can change that to horizontal, quadrant, radial, all those things. But I'm going to go jump in and I can slide this around to change the color of that guide. You probably already know this though, but I'll go on from here. Now my sketch, you'll see that it says assisted. Now you'll see on my other past layers that I already worked on, but it says assisted on the layer that I'm on. That means it's going to be mirroring anything that I do on the other side, which is what I want. At least for this bit, it'll speed up my sketch because it's already, I was planning on it to be symmetrical anyways. So first I'm going to go through here and try to figure out just where things are going to live. I want those little horn, little ear things. Those aren't actually ears, but they kind of look like them. They look like horns too. Try to figure out where these eyes are going to go. Right over here. But it'll just help me knock it out a lot quicker by using the symmetry tool. It's starting to look like Pikachu. That's not what I'm going for. Kind of go over the eyes right there. Trying to figure out what I want for the beak. Okay, I'm getting too shaky. That's one thing you shouldn't be doing. It's probably a good time to just point it out. Anytime you start finding yourself kind of doing the scratchy lines, it's okay when you're sketching, but it's going to make your lines not as clean and your curves not as smooth. So when you're getting into your final lines, you want to make sure that you're kind of making those nice and smooth. Try to get them all in one shot as opposed to doing what I just did down here. So slap on my wrist. I'll try to stop doing that and just try to make some confident lines. Okay, so maybe that's going to be a little bit big. The thing is when you are working with Drawing Assist, if I want to change anything here, it's not going to be mirrored as you're adjusting this. So make sure you center that again, because when you start drawing on it, it's not going to be even if you don't. So I like that. Okay, and then I want to draw the main head. Want to make sure that fits in here. Maybe I want a little bit of extra room there. These eyes are probably going to want to be bigger. And notice that the feathers kind of do this little thing underneath. And then it might be kind of nice to kind of drop in some textures just to give me an idea of what it could look like. There's going to be some extra little feathers right there. And the whole purpose of this, again, is just, oh gosh. The whole purpose of this is just to make it so that you can kind of get an idea of where everything's going to live. And I can adjust and everything here so much easier than if I added color and textures and clipping masks and all of those things. So try to get it as close as you can right here to this point with the sketch. The next step is not the most exciting part, but it's super necessary, and that's blocking out your shapes. And you can do those in any colors that you want. But first off, when you're looking at your sketch here, I'm not super happy with this sketch. So what I would typically do is I would lower the opacity of that layer with the sketch on it, and then I would work right on top of that and further clean this sketch into something that I'm really happy with and I have a really solid foundation. Now you'll also notice that when I started drawing, you'll still see this little line down the middle. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. There's the line for the drawing assist. Now when I started a new layer, it's not gonna have the drawing assist on it. So if I tap on it, I can make it be assisted. And so now when I draw, it's gonna be mirrored. And you can toggle that on and off depending on the layer you're on. And you'll just see where I ended up with my sketch. Went back, cleaned it up a little bit, and this is probably close enough to what I need. So now what I need to do is I'm gonna lower the opacity on this. We're not gonna sketch over it again. Now we're just gonna block out those main colors. And I'm gonna start choosing the brushes that I want to. So typically I'll just use a nice clean brush and have very clean edges. And then I'll add my textures and things on the inside. But this one I want it to feel a little bit more organic, a little bit more sketched out. All right, so let's go ahead and pick out our colors. I've already made a little color palette that I want to work with. So I can start with that, but it really doesn't matter, like I said, which colors you use for now, because we're just trying to separate them enough. And I want to make sure that when I'm doing each color, I'm going to be doing them, actually I'm going to drop this underneath. I multiplied this layer, so now when I work underneath it, I could still see the sketch above it, and that'll be good for me. So I also want to make sure everything's on a separate layer at each bit so that I can add masks and things. So just a little prep work right now will be helpful. This is my favorite brush to use of all time, but especially in this mid-century brush pack, and you'll see why. It's super versatile. It has such a cool texture to it. It's got such a cool texture to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and I'm going to start adding, just start filling this all in. And I don't really care, obviously. I'll just kind of do the edges, and I might fill in with a different brush because this might take a little while with the texture kind of peeking through, the background peeking through the texture. But I'm going to go through and start establishing what these edges are going to look like that. So then if I want a little bit of character on the edge of those, I don't know what you call them, little feathers, horns. I'm going to call them horns. I know they're just feathers, but look like little horns. I'll go through, fill this all in, and we're going to leave this cool textured edge. Now, let's just say I went through and I did this whole thing. You don't have to watch me do every bit of it, but if I went through the whole thing, and then I'm going to go through and just use my other brush, this big fat ink, and I can go through and just fill it in on the inside of that, because it's going to be that color anyways, and then I'm done. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go through, make a different layer again for the next bit. This one I actually am going to use I don't need the textured edge because this is the beak. It's kind of a harder, smoother surface, of course. So I'm just going to kind of work through. Oh, I should have done should have turned on drawing assist. So do that so it's, it's the same on both sides. It's mirrored. But for the sake of this, you can see. So some of these things will have like that. If I want that textured edge, I'll do it now. Otherwise, I'll just kind of do my normal flat, smooth edges, and then I can work on the next step. All right, so now we're finally at the really fun part of adding all the correct colors and textures and really doing our painting. So at this point, we just made some shapes and kind of got everything, all the groundwork laid, and everything's on their own separate layers. Now we need to start adding in those details. So I'm gonna do that with the Carbon Tab brush. Like I said, I use it for everything, and I use it for most everything on this, this illustration. So we're gonna go through, and I have everything on assist here that I wanna keep. Now I'll probably turn this off a bunch of times here because I wanna make some things look asymmetrical and unique, but the main shapes can be symmetrical. That's kind of what my plan was. So now we're going to go through and start adding some details. Let's do another layer right here. Actually, I'm going to drop it up above the eyes. You tap on it, and let's turn this into a clipping mask. Actually, let's turn this into a clipping mask below it, so this head is actually where the mask is going to be applied. There we go. So we want that whole head shape to be the mask. So it's not destroying any layers. You're just working within that shape. If you want that to be symmetrical, go through and use the symmetry tool by turning on the assist little button there. And now it's going to be mirroring that on both sides. Okay, so we're going to add in things like this. I'm going to add in another layer, make sure it's clipping mask as well. And now I want to start getting into not really sticking to the symmetry right here. We just got to work on making each of these sides feel interesting. So I love this brush because I can draw really lightly. I can press really lightly on the screen and it gives this really neat texture. But the harder I push on it, you know, I can make that feel really opaque, but it still has a really cool edge to it. So I want to go through and start making this really dark. I want this to feel really bold. So I'm going to take some liberties, obviously, with the colors. And also with the textures here with I want some high contrast here. And I can do that here with this nice black on top. Let's add in that bit right there. I like the way that looks. Now there's some spots on the head that I want to add in there. But really this stage is all about adding in all these little details. We're going to do some finishing touches. That'll be the next video here, or the next part of this video. But in the meantime, we just want to go ahead and establish. Now, I'm going to be drawing right over top of those eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and create another layer right underneath it. And then I'm going to make this just a little dark area right here. Now I'm going to try to, again, this is kind of like color blocking out. Like color blocking, I want to just, you know, drop in some main textures where I think I'm going to need them, and then I can start finessing this a little bit later. So I know I'm going to want something out here around for the eye. Around the eyes, those feathers kind of going around to create that shape. I like that. But then I'm also going to want to go in here and start adding in maybe, let's do another layer. And I'm going to start adding a little bit of a halo around the eyes. Like that. Just to start. And then I'm going to go through and maybe I'll use this fat ink brush. This is what I use for my more flat edges, or smooth edges. So I'll go through and I'll maybe just go on. I'll draw. So another way you can do it, so you can use the clipping masks, or you can just go in and do alpha lock, and you're drawing within this shape still, but it's flattened. So this black is going to be flattened with that orange, which is a little bit scary, and I'm trying to work pretty quick, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. But now I can just drop in the things that I need. Maybe I'll add in, I'll use that carbon tab just for maybe like the middle of the eye right there. And then we'll do a little highlight on here that's going to be, it's going to be that whitish, it's going to be cream I think at the end, but white for now. There you go. And I also have other brushes here too if I want to add some more details, but we'll do that later. So right now my goal is just kind of knock out the main textures, any details I want on here, and just have a lot of fun with this. I'm going to go through and start just kind of messing around with the colors and see where I land on these textures. All right, so I'm really happy with where this is going. I really like these little spots on here. I was able to go through and make it. Now I could add more details, like some more feathery looking things, but I felt like just like the scratchiness of that brush made it feel kind of like feathers, and I'm really happy with it. I like how that turned out. Now I want to do some finishing touches like I said, so there's some things that are still bugging me a little bit. I feel like some of these lines are too clean, especially around the eyes and right here on the beak. It just feels like it's too clean. So what I might do is I'll go to that layer and I can either erase or draw on it, but let's go to the carbon tab brush. Maybe I'll tap and hold the eraser now that I had that selected as the brush, and I can go through and I can erase. Oops, I'm on the beak, Got lost a little bit. Now I can go through and just kind of hit the edges of this. I'll zoom in for like a bit right here. So you can see when I'm going in on the edges, I'm just taking away a little bit of that and adding a little bit of roughness. Now there's a way to do this where you're not actually damaging anything. And you know what? I'm going to take off the assist right here because I want this to feel a little bit more natural. But I can go through here and kind of distress those edges here. So when you zoom out, it feels just a little bit more cohesive. Now, I also would say when you're doing this, you can do like a mask if you'd like. Then it's non-destructive, but for the sake of time here, I'm just gonna kind of cruise through. Also on the eyes, on the pupil here, on the highlights here of the eyes, I'm gonna go through and just barely hit it. You could even draw a circle with the eraser tool and hold it and let go, and it kind of gives you like a more perfect circle there. But I was kind of thinking of doing something like that, and it feels just a little less perfect, which I like. So I'll go through, kind of do things like that with these harder, smoother edges. I might also want to do, I'm going to use a different brush. Shocking, I know. Another cool brush is this carbon brush that I like, and I'm going to use this on the eyes here. And I kind of want to add some more things. Like maybe I want to add like another line in the inside of here. I kind of like the way that looks. And you might add a little bit more shading or shadowing here. Let's see what else. What else can I add here? This looks a little bit interesting. Now I want to go and fix up around the eyes. Maybe I'll do this and lower the opacity, or not lower the opacity, lower the size of that brush a little bit. So I changed it to more of like a tan color, but it's not really important because we're going to do a filter at the end of this. So now I'm just going to make this look a little bit more purposeful on the outside. Just with a few little lines. This is what I mean by cleaning it up and kind of finishing it off. Making it just look exactly how I want. A lot of times too, I like to add a little bit of extra. So like right on here, maybe adding that blue in some of those dark areas might be kind of cool. So for example, right up here, you know, it's dark. Why don't I add some of those blue streaks as like little highlights here? Might be kind of neat. And it kind of makes it feel a little bit more cohesive. Maybe even down over here on these little bits. I'm not sure. I usually get carried away before I have to kind of restrain myself a little bit. But I like that. It makes the colors feel like a little bit more balanced. So, okay, so I pretty much have this. Oh, you know what? I want to add like a little bit of a highlight here too, just to kind of pull it all together. See how neat that does a little highlight on there? Just press a little harder for that to be darker and then pull off a little bit to make it have that little textured edge. And then I was actually thinking what might be kind of fun is by taking this entire shape, I'm going to duplicate it, take the one on the bottom, and I'm actually going to turn it orange. Now, I didn't just think of this right away. I was actually kind of playing around with things, and I discovered that I kind of like this. So I'm turning on alpha lock, and then I'm going to hit fill layer with the color that I have selected. So now I'm going to tap my arrow here to kind of move it, and it kind of gives it this little bit of, I don't know, kind of like a, what is that called? A little 3D effect. But if nothing else, it adds just a cool, I don't know what it does. It kind of pulls it together a little bit. You see those oranges kind of come through on all sides. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. But I just think it looks so cool. I don't know why, but it looks really, really neat. Maybe it's like a print defect or something like that. Either way, I think it looks cool, and that's really what's it's important. If I think it looks cool, it's going to stay. So then I'm going to go through next, and I'm going to go add what's called phantom paper on Retro Supply, and we're going to add a cool texture just to finalize it all. Now this bit is really easy and really fast. You don't have to do anything crazy. Maybe I'll do another video of how to make something look vintage and texture, but in the meantime, you can just buy it. It's not even that expensive. It's on Retro Supply. It's called Phantom Paper. And basically you open it up as a Procreate canvas or a project, and you get these paper effects already adjusted with the textures, the ink fade, and the paper texture. And then it all overlays your artwork. You have a little layer there. You just drop your artwork in, and it automatically makes it feel like it's printed. So cool. Like I said, I'm going to do another video of how to get that textured effect if you want to build your own. I just purchased this one, and it works fantastic. But sometimes you do want to adjust things. So you can go through and adjust all the different things. Maybe you don't want it to be so yellow because that opacity is up a little high. So I'm going to drop that down a little bit. And maybe that ink fade is pretty intense. I want my colors to be a little bit more vibrant, so I'll move it back. You can even tap on your existing image and go over to your adjustments, and you can play around with your coloring or your saturation. And you can go in here and you can like saturate that even further, or make it a little bit brighter, however you want to do that. But those are kind of some of the ways that I might mess with it after the fact. But yeah, that little tool here, just to make it kind of look instantly vintage, is really, really neat. So I'll go back and you can see before and after here. You can see it with it toggled off like this. And then when I have it on, it adds that cool little effect. I hope you can see that. I also made it a little bit more subtle, but you can see how different that looks. Well, that's all I have for y'all today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helped. I had a really fun time drawing this owl, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I feel like it's gonna be something that I can turn into a series for Halloween. So I'll maybe make a series of art prints related to this. And that's one of the reasons why I used a really minimal color palette. One, because I wanted it to be bold and graphic, but two, it makes it easier to do that series and they all feel cohesive. So keep an eye out for that. Also, if you really like that texture, the paper texture and making it look all vintage, that was called Phantom Papers, and that's at Retro Supply. So you can find those down in the link below in the description. But also, if you like the brushes that I used, that's one of my favorite brush packs of all time, is the Mid-Century Procreate pack, also by Retro Supply. You can find that down below. But thanks again, and I'll see you next time.